Good start, everyone. No pasaran. I just want to thank everybody for coming and braving COVID and the air and all that stuff like that. You know, we've just recently finished the monument. Last year we were hoping to have an event, but COVID forced us to shut that down. Last year, of course, was a horrible year in a lot of ways, but then at the end, at least we triumphed in some ways in the election. You know, as you know, the vets were one of the first officially called anti-fascists. And now that we see, you know, fascism rising again in this country, we were able to, at least in the election, defeat Trump. But I want to, that time around, I want to remind everybody from California that there's another election coming up in a few weeks, and how important it is to vote no on the recall. No pasaran, no on the recall. That's right. Great. So anyway, we have a special guest here today from New York, from the New York office of ALBA, Dennis. I'll let him come up and say a few words here.
Hey everybody, my name is Dennis Meaney. I am from the ALBA office in New York. I just want to thank everybody for coming out to honor and rededicate the beautiful monument here that's been recently restored. It's good to see. I'm very new to the organization myself, so it's good to see everybody here for the first time, and also to see many people probably seeing people for the first time in a long time because of everything going on. So that's fantastic. Let's clap for that. Yeah, so it's great to be involved with ALBA. You know, great to gather to remember the legacy of the Lincoln Brigade and all the activism they did when they returned from Spain, from that fight. So I'll just say, if you would like to get, I'll just give the little plug. If you'd like to get more involved with ALBA, we have a website. It's alba-valb.org. ALBA, the Abraham Lincoln Brigade Archive, Veterans of Abraham Lincoln Brigade.org. If you don't find me after this, if you don't receive copies of our magazine, The Volunteer, we have some on this table over here. Feel free to grab them. And yeah, we have a great little event lined up. We're gonna do a little ceremony dedication to using these carnations here. People can come up and place a carnation on the monument later. And we'll also have with us here Dr. June Gipson from My Brother's Keeper, who's going to speak later, our ALBA Puffin Human Rights Award winner. So that'll come later. But again, thank you everybody for coming. And I'd like to introduce to everybody. So many people probably already know him. Please welcome Bruce Barthol. He's a singer-songwriter, musician, lyricist with the San Francisco Mime Troupe, and original member of Country Joe and the Fish.
Okay. All right. Well, we're going to have to channel Pete Seeger, I think, so that we're audible. All right. Okay. Let's. There's a valley in Spain called Jarama. It's a place that we all know so well, where we fought like true sons of the people and saw that peaceful valley blown to hell. Well, we're far from that valley of sorrow, and the difference we never will see, 'cause I forgot the lyrics to this verse now, so I'll beg you please. Viva la Quince Brigada, viva la Quince Brigada, que se ha cubierto de gloria. Ay Manuela, que se ha cubierto de gloria. Ay Manuela, en los frentes de Jarama, en los frentes de Jarama, no tenemos ni aviones, ni tanques, ni camiones. Ay Manuela, no tenemos ni aviones, ni tanques. tanques ni cañones, ay Manuela. Viva la 15 Brigada, rumba, rumba, rumba. Viva la 15 Brigada, rumba, rumba, rumba. Que se ha cubierto de gloria, ay Manuela, ay Manuela. Que se ha cubierto de gloria, ay Manuela, ay Manuela. There we go. Okay.
We have now two special guests here. As you probably remember, the Spanish Civil War wasn't just about fighting, it was about the Spanish Republic, and the Spanish Republic stood for health care for everyone, education, economics, women's rights. So this year, the Puffin Foundation gave us Human Rights Award to a group from Mississippi, My Brother's Keeper. And we have the CEO of it, June Gipson, here.
Well, I'm so honored to be invited to this event. I mean, this monument, the people, and what ALBA stands for is truly valuable to the community in which we serve, and I'm just truly pleased to be here. And after learning more about ALBA and talking with Steve and Richard and Peter and Nancy and Linda, I have a new appreciation for what ALBA does. But for my very first introduction, and when I learned about it, it actually prompted an emotional response for me. And I know you don't know me, but I'm not an emotional chick. You know, I try to keep things compartmentalized and I don't really get emotional. But the night that I found out that we will be the recipients of the ALBA Puffin Human Rights Award, I actually shedded tears. Now, if you've never been invisible, you may not understand why I cried. You may not understand why I was emotional. But for the very first time, I felt as if we were being seen for not only what we do, but who we are, for the work that we're so passionate and so dedicated to doing. But then to be seen by an organization like ALBA, an organization that's mission, passion, and dedication is rooted in being on the right side of history. Look, it's more valuable than what you probably would ever perceive. It is something that highlights an organization, and highlights a person, and it makes us, it gives us the strength and power to keep going on. And I love seeing me and seeing the organization from your point of view. I like the idea that you want to do the right thing. You get up every day thinking about the right thing. You have legacy. I mean, your families, your uncles, your aunts, your grandfathers, your families wanted to stay on the right side of history. And I think that being honored by you and being honored by you gives me the confidence to know that we're doing something right and that I too will end up on the right side of history. And I believe with this is absolutely beautiful. And I got stuck on one of them. The extraordinary story of ordinary people. Though My Brother's Keeper is nowhere near ALBA and the sacrifices that the people made, I would have to say that we are a group of ordinary people doing extraordinary things, and I hope that our story is going to be told for years to come as ALBA has, and I'm so thankful for everything that you have done. Thank you.
My name is Deja. I too am a part of the MBK Open Arms family, but before that I'm a Mississippian. And when I started to work with the organization, because we do so much data work, colored maps always get my attention. And I was in Detroit at the African American Museum and I saw a map that looked like health disparities. But then I thought, why would a health disparity map be in the museum? And I went back and it wasn't a health disparity map. It was an 1860 slave population map. And from my perspective, it looked just like the obesity map, the hypertension map, the HIV map, the STI map, now the COVID map. There are a lot of scientists that believe the color of your flesh or the DNA in your system make you ineligible for basic rights. And that's wrong. No matter who you are, how you love, where you live, you deserve basic rights. And there are some people that aren't as skilled at articulating the reason they should have that right. They don't sing the song, they don't write the poem, they can't forge a way, but ALBA did that for those who couldn't. We do that work for those who couldn't. And though the veterans are no longer here, you can feel the spirit of do for your brother in this space. And this lovely monument being erected during a time where America is evolving, taking baby steps towards respect and equity, tearing down monuments that have been raised to support divisiveness, and to see something that so collectively represents these multifaceted ways of dedicating myself to all of our liberty is a really beautiful thing. So again, on behalf of Dr. Gipson and My Brother's Keeper and Open Arms Healthcare, doing our work in Mississippi, continue to send your positive vibes. We need every single last one of them. And we are truly honored to be a part of this spectacular moment. Thank you so much.
I think many of us here remember the years that this post here in the Bay Area had big events, and it was like going to church once a year, and there were hundreds, if not sometimes 1,000 people, and good people, and good stories, and important work that was highlighted year after year. And that's changing. We know we have instead a monument, and we have the work of ALBA, and we have really wonderful people like My Brother's Keeper who are joining in the same way that we were together in that time. I think it's a new way of carrying on, and it's up to us, and we probably know, to keep that going. And I just want to thank you for being here. It makes me feel really proud. As you know, the monument was inaugurated in 2007, and then it was, I think, about 2016 when we realized that we needed to redo the panels. So it has been a road. I'm sure there will be more transformations of the monument as it goes through time, but we will be there, and our friends will be there, and our people on the right side of history, I hope, will be there to keep this going. So now we'd like to invite you to lay a carnation on the monument. For those who don't know, the red carnation symbolized for a lot of years the power of the International Brigade, the power of people from all these countries coming together in the world to fight fascism. And we use it today to honor the monument and each other for carrying this on. To the strength of all of us here today, and to the veterans of the Abraham Lincoln Brigade, Leonard Olson, Viva!
Hi, I'm Linda Lustig. I actually was the head of the planning committee for the monument for many, many years, so it's very exciting to see it in such great shape. And this is in memory of my father, Dave Smith, who not only went to Spain, but worked on many things thereafter, and actually gave us the inspiration and the push, constant push, to really make this happen.
Hi, my name is Meaney Freeman, and I'm placing this carnation in honor of my uncle Jack Freeman, who died when he was 19 years old in Spain. Hi, my name is Emily Lazar. I was on the original monument committee and was very, very proud of this monument. And this is in honor of my father, Bill Lawrence.
This is in honor of my father, her grandfather, her great-grandfather, who fought with the Talman Brigade because he was from Sweden. He wasn't a Lincoln, but he still fought the good fight, and he would be very proud, especially to see his great-granddaughter here today doing that.
I am from El Salvador in the 80s. And during the 80s, there was a war by the United States, and nobody knew that. The United States was very involved in there. So that's how I got to meet, and they became friends of mine and compañeros work, many of them in Berkeley here. You know, used to be a lot of them, and they are in my heart. And thank you, Archie Brown, Bill Wolf. I don't remember all of them, but I'm so glad they taught me so much that I still trying to spread the same.
So this is in honor of my father, Irving Weissman. He fought in Spain. He came home. He was a co-defendant with Steve Nelson back in the McCarthy era. He stayed active with ALBA for a while. I think he was the editor of The Volunteer. He helped send ambulances down to Nicaragua. And he just stayed active all his life. And when he wound up in an assisted living facility, he went to the current events group and got everybody to vote against the war in Iran. So he never stopped.
My father, Jacob Persoff, he was in the Tallman Battalion, and the war in Spain is over, but the fight for social justice is not over.
My father, Ted Belfort, drove an ambulance for the Lincolns. I also want to remember my mother, Helene Belfort, didn't go to Spain, but she was the head of the Spanish Refugee Committee. And with so many refugees in the world right now, I am thinking of her. Thank you.
We're here to honor my parents, Jack Hartzman and May Levine, who were both in Spain. My mother was a nurse, my father drove an ambulance.
This is in honor of my aunt by marriage, Santa Goldblatt, who was a nurse.
Mi nombre es Lenny Siegel. Mi padre luchó en la guerra civil contra las fascistas. Aquí es mi sobrino. Su abuelo era aquí. Él regresó. Y estoy aquí para decir hasta la victoria siempre.
Hasta la victoria siempre. This is for Fred Keller and Ruth Davidow, my girlfriend's parents, both in the Lincoln Brigade.
My name is Susan, and I'm here to honor nurses. This is for Sana Goldblatt, my mother. Toby Jensky, nurse. Annie Town, nurse. Helen, nurse. And for Celeria Keys, nurse. Thank you.
I want to mention 3 names. One is Bill Lazar, also known as Bill Lawrence. He's already been mentioned, but I happened to marry his daughter. But I also had the good fortune of meeting Steve Nelson and Eddie Bender.
This is for my dad, who was fought in Spain, was shot and wounded, Howard Goddard.
Whose father, Hyman Tabb, was in Spain, and his friend Joe Dallett, who died in Spain.
Viva, Archie Brown. Presente.
I was asked by Laura X to commemorate her husband, John Mira, and I'd like to commemorate Bill Wolf.
I will dedicate this to people who have fought for the rights of others, and I am honored to put this carnation here in celebration of your families.
Spain has been etched in the hearts of our generation and carried all around like a terrible wound. Spain gave us our first taste of defeat, and because of her, we discovered with an enduring shock that one can be right and still be defeated, that sheer force can trample the human spirit underfoot, and there are times when courage goes unrewarded. But without a doubt, this explains why so many people the world over have experienced the Spanish drama as their own personal tragedy. When we hear about the way that your forefathers fought, so did ours, and so did others across the world. And it's a shame that a decent idea about freedom to everyone, some people are allergic to that. But I think it's also amazing that we've dedicated ourselves to being the antidote to that type of stupidity. So for every brigade, sung and unsung, every warrior, rewarded and unrewarded, in the East, in the South, in the West, in Spain, for those that fought so that we could continue to fight. I lay this.
So I'm from Gijón, from the north of Spain. I grew up there until I was 25, and I've never seen this effort to preserve the memory of the people who died fighting for freedom, right? So in my town, we have this cemetery, and there's a special area reserved for the people who fought for the Republic, and there are thousands of people buried there. Nobody knows who's there. I know there's a small association of people, of families, of who have tried to do something to recover the bodies, and they haven't, received any answer from the government in all these years. And so, I've always thought, what happened here? Why we don't remember? Why there's nobody trying to remember and to recover these bodies? And the answer is very simple: is that the sons and daughters of the perpetrators of those 40 years of dictatorship are still alive and well, and they are in power. Our right wing is a very strong right wing, who are the descendants of the people who held the power for 40 years, right? And I don't think many people know this in the U.S. That Franco, this Hitler-like figure, died in bed, right? And so when I see these efforts to keep the memory alive of the people who fought for our freedom, so it makes me so emotional, because I've never seen this in Spain. In my own country, we have forgotten, and we have so much work to do, right? So I'm so thankful for you that you're keeping this memory alive, right? So thank you. Muchas gracias.
Why don't you say a little bit about what this means to Veterans for Peace and your group, and why you've been so involved with us and all that?
Well, veterans, the Abraham Lincoln Brigade, premature anti-fascists. We were post-mature anti-fascists in Veterans for Peace. Most of us went and served in the U.S. military or other militaries in some cases, and didn't really speak out until we had already done damage. But the Abraham Lincoln Brigade were just the most heroic people in American history, really. That they went and their internationalism was expressed in going somewhere and trying to stop the creation of fascism was just an extraordinary thing, and VFP owes that to them, that it can be done. And then, in 1993, when we had the convention here in San Francisco, and David Smith and honored VFP as kind of the next generation. It was an honor we didn't deserve, but we were very honored to have it, and we really appreciate that. And then the creation of the monument, I got involved very late in it, but I was happy to see it go up. And but I was involved in the rebuild, which I was happy to have some contribution to how that happened.
Did quite a bit. There was a story that I believe that at the march, at the way Vietnam Vets Against the War got formed, was at the March on the Pentagon. A bunch of the vets came up to ALBA people and said, "Wow, we're so inspired," or something. And they said, "Well, you could do it too," And then I think they raised a little money for them, And
I was still in the Marines at that point. I had no idea that was being formed, but that is true. That's the genesis of VVAW, and Veterans for Peace is kind of the more recent version of VVAW, and that's we owe such a tremendous debt to the brigade, and that the Abraham Lincoln Brigade Archives is taking such good care of the monument and the work that you're doing to document.
Well, I mean, you guys are carrying on Veterans for Peace. You know, it's let people know that there are veterans that support peace. That, like, you know, in the anti-war movement, we said we support the troops. We think they should come home, and that's the best way to keep them safe. Right. The best way to keep, you know, the troops home is safe is to bring them home. Right. And we supported the troops, right.
And you know, now we're a bunch of old guys. You know, the Vietnam veterans and the World War II veterans and the Korean veterans that started Veterans for Peace. Those older guys are all gone. I mean, every one. But and now us Vietnam veterans are feeling our age, and younger veterans are coming into VFP to keep it going.
Well, that's great.
And they're demanding some changes of us crotchety old bastards, you know, and that's, which is good.
You're always good at mentoring people, and a good organizer.
Yeah, thank you. So Veterans for Peace at this point has about 80 active chapters. We have an active chapter in England, Ireland, Vietnam, Korea, Okinawa, and Japan, as opposed to Okinawa. And these are they're not big chapters for the most part, but they're active. And I'm very active in the Vietnam chapter, working on trying to deal with the legacies of the Vietnam War, unexploded ordnance, and Agent Orange, which are still major problems in those countries. So we're very proud to be able to practice that kind of internationalism, that kind of reparations, that kind of reconciliation.
When I was 4, best friend of our family, who was a pacifist, my parents were communists, but he was a pacifist. He went to Spain and became an ambulance driver. The main story that he came back with was the big job was to scrape the Red Cross off the ambulances because the fascists would use it for target practice, even if there were wounded fascists in the wagon, because he'd pick up anybody who was wounded. There was no discrimination once they were shot. And so he was a real hero. My mother always wanted him to marry her sister, actually. But after that, he came back and he brought me helmets that pilots wore, and he was quite a nice guy, and stayed friends till we moved to Petaluma, left LA behind, and he was a great guy.
I was very sorry that, because I thought he told me he was coming, that Peter Carroll wasn't here, because Peter was so much involved with the revivifying of ALBA, and I'm sure he was very much involved with the monument. And also I knew slightly, and maybe I should have stood up and honored them. I knew somewhat both Alva Bessie and Lillian Hellman. And you don't hear, and it's terrific that they were quoted, and because I don't think their names are not as resonant, particularly Lillian's, as they once were. And then also I'm very interested, I've written about George Orwell, and was Orwell had, because of his involvement with food and his Orwell's relationship with the left, it was always a bit fraught, but I think Homage to Catalonia is an extraordinarily good book. Although somebody said it's better about the nature of war. Hugh Thomas, in his book about the Spanish Civil War, said that he felt that Homage to Catalonia was better about war, the nature of war, than the Spanish Civil War. And of course, it wasn't, it was more or less, it was very little attention was paid to it when it was first published. And I think the paradox of Orwell is that Homage to Catalonia was reissued very much as a Cold War document, but Orwell, ironically, can be characterized as a sort of patriotic socialist, or indeed he could almost be characterized as a Cold War socialist. But Spain, I wrote a book with a collaborator called Orwell, the Transformation, in which the argument, which I think is true, was that his experience, he says, my experience in Spain made me a democratic socialist, as I understand it. So his experience of Spain was really what made him firmly committed to the cause of socialism.
Yeah, there's a lot of controversy.
Those were my thoughts that were triggered by it. And I thought this was a wonderful event.
The best thing about today was to see that the spirit that motivated people to fight in Spain is still alive, and I'm so glad to see that. And on a personal note, because I got up and I mentioned my father's name, he was a vet in the Tallman Battalion. Nancy Tsao came up to say hello afterward, and we reconnected to my friend of my father's that I hadn't seen in so many years. Like, I never met her before. And so we made this connection just by the coincidence of, being here and me talking. So I guess that means you should always speak up.
Great. What was
Thank
your
you.
father's name again?
Jacob Persoff.
Jacob
Yes,
Persoff.
but in the brigades he called himself Jim. I don't know if that was because he was trying to evade anti-Semitism, perhaps, or. But anyway.
So a lot of them had two names. I mean, they're nom de guerre, so to speak.
Right, it could have been so.
A lot of them had.
But I'm so, like I say, you're not dead as long as people remember you, and it's wonderful to know that he is still remembered. Thank you.
Human Rights and Wrongs. And it tells stories of many different people in the United States trying to get asylum, having fled from great oppression, including torture. And of course, now it's so difficult for anybody to be given asylum at all in this country that it's just outrageous, because it contravenes everything about international law and what people are entitled to who are fleeing from oppression. But anyway, that's what my book is about, and yes, I've been doing it for a long time.
Central America, you were in Central America?
Yes. And actually first got introduced to the whole idea of internationalism and how important that is by being part of the Venceremos Brigade, going to Cuba in 1969. In Cuba, the first brigade. That's where I learned the meaning of international solidarity. And I had known a little bit about things like the Abraham Lincoln Brigade, which is a great inspiration, but in a way that becomes for us historical because it's from before your time. And then going to some place like Cuba that's part of your very existence on a day-by-day basis, it's a true revelation about what you can do when you get home. So,
the vets went to Cuba at one point to break the blockade. They went on a trip there.
Yeah. And the vets did wonderful work for Nicaragua during the Nicaraguan fighting of the Contra War, sending ambulances to Nicaragua.
And for years they funded the Pablo Soleri Pediatric Hospital in Havana, which is a wing of a larger hospital whose name I don't know. But for years, every year, every event, some of that fundraising went directly to Cuba. Always.
The medicine too.
Yeah.
Over there. Thanks for being here.
My name is Margot Feinberg. My mother was Helen Freeman Feinberg. She was a nurse in Spain. She went over into Spain with the 1st Medical Battalion, along with several other nurses and doctors, including Dr. Barsky. She was a nurse at Brooklyn Jewish Hospital, and she went with some other friends to a meeting about what was happening in Spain. And she decided to sign up, and her friends did not. And she left on it was actually like a cruise ship across to Paris. That's how they got to Spain. And from there they went over the Pyrenees And that experience in Spain, I think, is emblematic of who my mother was. She was a fierce fighter for social justice her entire life. She lived into her 80s. Along with her friends, they were a remarkable group of women: Ruth Davidow, Leanie DeVries, Frederica Martin, Becky Durham, Toby Jensky, whose picture is over there. And they stayed friends their entire lives. There was a bond between them. And I think, as history has written, many of them did very unique things. Ruth Davidow, who was from here, was in fact at Alcatraz when the Native Americans took Alcatraz. My mother worked with the people in the farm labor camps in Corvallis. She went to Germany after the war and helped people with joint coming out of the camps. She worked as a public health nurse in Ecuador. She worked in ILGWU clinic. And I think, others, their stories are known. Frederica Martin, who worked with in the Aleutian Islands, and Leanie DeVries on a donkey through Mexico, helping people who wound up in exile in Cuernavaca. They were a very, very unique group of women who didn't always get their due. And so it's nice to see them some of them on this monument here, and to have their lives in history live on. So I hope that's what...
Oh, that's wonderful. How did they influence you in your life, your mother?
Well, I am my mother's daughter in many ways. I look like my mother. And I was influenced by her. I went to law school. I became a union labor lawyer, and 40 years later, I've been representing labor union workers. And I've been thinking about her a lot in the middle of the COVID, and all of the nurses who have stepped forward and the circumstances of which they were and the risks they took, much like the nurses who went to Spain. And so I would say that she inspired me in that way. But my mother actually was a little bit unique in terms of some of the vets, which is my mother was very understated. She was not polemical. She was not doctrinaire. She was moved, not that all of them were, but she was moved by her heart and her humanity, and that is what moved her through her entire life. So I would say she lived her values. And so the greatest gift that she gave to me was that she lived her values, and I've tried to do the same. And the gift of friendship, which is lifetime friendship. And I feel like that she shared that with me, and I've tried to carry that on too. So that's one way. My brother's also a union labor lawyer. I'm married to a union organizer. So there you have it. We carry it on. One of the unions I represent just recently, the UAW, just filed for 17,000 graduate student employees. I've been involved in that campaign from its inception, and that's very exciting. And I've been spent most of the pandemic representing retail clerks and meatpacking workers facing the conditions in the plants and in the stores. So, trying to improve health regulations actually, so that they're safe at work. So that's how I try to bridge that.
Have any stories about Barsky, Dr. Barsky?
My mother was one of the people who was injured in Spain, and he was very devoted to her. She was in she was in a tent when the bombs came by, and they strafed the tents, even though they had a Red Cross insignia on the tent. And she went down, and they had to he was there, and they had to dig a trench to put her in until they could get her out and then he, monitored her care. And when she came back to this country, his brother was also a physician, and she was under his care. And this is sort of a little Barsky-Feinberg story, or Freeman-Feinberg story. But many people thought that she would lose her arm. She was highly infected. They had to use maggots to clean out the infection, everything. And so, but my mother said, no way, no how. And so between her and the brother of Dr. Barsky, she saved her arm and continued to be a nurse for the rest of her life. So, they were, personal friends, close, things like that. I don't know what other kinds of stories. My mother had me when she was 42, so my life is I'm like the youngest of the vet children's in a way, because of that. My mother lost her parents during the 1918 influenza. She was raised by her aunt and uncle, and she went on her own. She was just determined to go. So, she didn't have family there or anything. I think the women there and the men there became her friends and family. She was the commander of the Southern California post for many years. Because of her friends here, Santa and Ruth and so forth, she would come up here and visit as well. So, thank you. All right. Good luck.